Minutes. Acting U.S. Attorney Joshua Levy will be joined by Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox, Special Agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations in New England, Michael Kroll, K-R-O-L, Special Agent in charge of the ATF in Boston, James Ferguson. Joining them on the stage will be the AUSAs on the case. Any questions? All right, we'll be right back.
All right. Good morning, everyone. One of the core missions of the Department of Justice is to keep communities safe. And the case we're announcing today goes right to that bedrock priority. Today, indictments and criminal complaints have been unsealed in federal court, charging over 40 individuals with racketeering conspiracy, drug offenses, firearms offenses, and financial crimes, including COVID fraud and brazen organized retail theft. The defendants charged today are members and associates of the Heath Street Gang, which, as alleged in the court documents, has been operating for many years in and around the Mildred C. Haley Apartments in Jamaica Plain. This morning, nearly 24 members and associates of the Heath Street Gang were arrested, and several other individuals who are in state and federal custody have now been charged in federal court with new offenses. In addition to the arrests, over 60 firearms were seized in the course of this investigation. Firearms that were used in illegal conduct, such as shootings, and firearms that were illegally possessed. The defendants charged in the racketeering conspiracy have been alleged to have been involved in 3 separate murders and multiple shootings. Some of those shootings left innocent victims in crossfire, including a 9-year-old girl who was severely injured attending a family gathering. Now, I think most of you are aware that the statistics around shootings and murders in Boston have continued to drop, and a ton of people deserve credit for that. But if you live in a community that's threatened with violence on a daily basis, the citywide numbers don't mean nearly as much. When you're living in a community that's racked with threats of violence, it's your daily existence. And for the people who living in the Haley apartment buildings, they were surrounded by these gang members and associates who were engaged in this conduct. And they bragged about their violence on social media and in texts. And you can see from some of these photos, they carried high-powered weapons, they made gang signs, and mocked gang rivals. One of these pictures shows defendant Ja'Carri Lyons, to my left, holding what's essentially a machine gun. It's a Glock semi-automatic pistol retrofitted with a Glock switch in the back that turns it into a fully automatic weapon. These defendants also produce music videos to allegedly promote themselves and denigrate rival gangs. In some videos, they bragged, as the documents allege, about murders the gang had committed. One line from a rap video allegedly talked about victims of the gang violence. And it says, and I quote, "I can say the names, but I might make the feds come for us." Well, the feds have come for you, and we showed up with our federal, state, and local partners in a highly coordinated effort to root out violence, stop gun and drug trafficking, and bring peace to this public housing development. Now, the case isn't only about violence. As you'll see in the court papers, we've alleged both COVID fraud and retail theft. Some of the defendants received thousands of dollars in fraudulent unemployment assistance. One defendant applied for unemployment assistance, as alleged, in 10 separate states: Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, even applied for employment assistance in Guam. There are 23 separate employment claims submitted, as alleged in the indictments, fraudulently for a company called Married to the Mop. And they submitted letters of verification that are identical and, as alleged, are fraudulent. All told, the COVID fraud in this case is over $900,000. And as you'll see in one of these posters here, the defendants bragged about buying over 100 guns with their COVID fraud money, money that was designed to help people who are dealing with the pandemic. And also on the financial crimes, the indictments allege bold retail theft, walking into stores like Nordstrom's, Victoria's Secrets, Sunglass Hut, grabbing thousands of dollars in merchandise, threatening security personnel who came up, walking out the front door with all those goods. And lastly, before I close and turn it over to my colleagues here, there's one other important aspect of this case. It involves the use of juveniles to engage in the conduct alleged in these criminal complaints and indictments. Use of juveniles as lookouts, use of juveniles to hold guns and drugs, use of juveniles to engage in shootings. And that is a problem we're hearing about from urban police chiefs across Massachusetts and, frankly, across the country. The honest, law-abiding people who live in the Haley apartments want the same thing we all want. They want to be able to send their children off to school, out to play, without fear that they're going to be hurt or recruited into a gang. And as alleged in these indictments, there are instances where parents tried to intervene and tried to engage with the police to help get their children away from the gang. And the defendants in this case tried to intimidate and prevent that action from happening. And as Commissioner Cox is going to share in more detail, the Boston Police are going to be back at the Haley Apartments this week, engaging with the community, talking to the juveniles, trying to get them into programs and services to steer them away from what they've been exposed to. But the message we want to leave for the mother who tried to intervene and get her kids away from the gang, for all the mothers and fathers and grandparents and guardians, is we're here. We're going to work tirelessly to root out these kind of problems. And we're not going to rest until we get those numbers that I talked about in terms of shootings and murders as low as possible. And lastly, an unequivocal message to anyone engaged in this type of conduct, that we're going to work together and we're not going to cease our efforts. And that this kind of sweeping charges doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without close coordination with our local, state, and federal partners. Those aren't just words. I wish the public could see the amount of collaboration and effort and teamwork that happens. Boston Police Department, Boston Housing Authority Police, Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, Suffolk County Sheriff's Office, Mass State Police, federal partners. I'm joined here by colleagues from Homeland Security and ATF, but we also have Department of Labor, Secret Service, Marshals, Department of Agriculture, Postal Inspection Service, all of them collaborating on a 2-year investigation. And lastly, phenomenal work by the members of my office. 2 of them are here on stage, Lucy Sun and Sarah Hofel, another one, Michael Crowley. They put 2 years into this to generate these kind of sweeping charges. And I owe great gratitude to everyone I just mentioned, all the agencies and the work that went in there. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Cox, and we hope that today is a significant step to making Boston even safer. Commissioner?
Thank you, U.S. Attorney. Today's announcement is an example of the best of local, state, and federal cooperation and partnership, using public safety and all our resources and expertise to solve an issue revolving around crime that impacts neighborhoods, particularly in the city. I want to thank the U.S. Attorney, ATF, Department of Homeland Security, United States Secret Service. There's so many agencies that the U.S. Attorney just made listed before that have cooperated and participated in this, that I just don't want to miss anyone, but I want to thank you all for your cooperation around this. There are many components needed to keep communities safe: involvement with the public, certainly the willingness to listen to their concerns, and then more importantly, follow up with those concerns and how it impacts their community by removing the people that are causing the crime in that area. Hopefully today's actions will contribute to us, and certainly in the city of Boston, of building more trust with the citizens we serve by making sure that they understand that their safety is important and that we hear them. When you talk about partnership, this is what it looks like. I've been in law enforcement 35 years, and the coordination and effort involved in this particular case is very impressive to help us solve the issue of the day. Those determined to bring violence and other criminal activity to Boston will be met with this collective of resources and collaboration from the public and all our public safety partners, not only in our region, but the Massachusetts in general. And we appreciate those partnerships. These bad actors that we targeted today took advantage of young people. They used fear, intimidation, and violence to gain personally. They took advantage of the youngest amongst us. They took advantage of people's, the sons and daughters in these neighborhoods and actually turned them to a life of crime. This is an impactful investigation. This is going to be impactful for our city for some time to come. And I want to particularly recognize the significant contributions of both our Youth Violence Strike Force, our Boston Regional Intelligence Center, and several other Boston police officers as well who have been participating in this long investigation. Intelligence-driven policing is how we identify individuals that negatively impact our neighborhoods. This is a significant operation. There will be additional follow-up, and the impact of Boston neighborhoods is going to be significant from today and going forward. As always, the Boston Police Department, including with the Mayor's Office and all our city partners, will work not only to target the drivers of crime, but also focus resources in the areas to address the root causes of crime to begin with. And we will begin that really important work in the days and weeks to come. But again, I want to thank all the partners for the work on this, because this is going to be impactful for our city for some time to come. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. A big thanks to U.S. Attorney Levy, Commissioner Cox, Jim Ferguson from the ATF, Department of Labor, Secret Service, and the list goes on. Can't thank them enough for their important work. My name is Michael Kroll. I'm the Special Agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations here in New England. And today, as you see, we all stand shoulder to shoulder to say enough is enough. Too many lives have been lost, too many communities impacted, too many businesses decimated by criminal networks who are driven only by greed and power, operating with a complete disregard for the rule of law. As evidenced today by this multi-agency response, we in law enforcement have seen a steady shift to what we know now as polycriminal organizations, those who are not tied to a singular scheme or criminal enterprise, but rather who will diversify their criminal portfolios to monetize crime through violence, racketeering, fraud, organized retail crime, narcotics and weapons, among many others. Our collective response must keep pace with that ever-evolving threat. It is our responsibility here to ensure the safety and security of our communities. And today, we show our commitment to that resolve through our actions. So thank you very much. I want to introduce Jim Ferguson from ATF.
Good morning. I'm Jim Ferguson. I am the Special Agent in charge for ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. This investigation you've heard over and over is based upon the successes you're seeing here today, and this case, as it's culminated, is largely based upon the partnerships that ultimately brought this to bear. All of the agencies that participated on it, you've heard over and over, local, state, and federal, those are numerous assets, numerous resources that have been dedicated to try and quell the violence, not only in this city, but in cities far expanding past Boston. The firearms trafficking schemes that were involved in this particular scheme, in this particular operation, expand far outside of Boston. And so I want to make sure that it's clear this is an operation that we needed our federal and state and local partners, all with their expertise, to bring to this and actually bring this to a successful, safe conclusion. As a result of today's operation, there are a number of people that will be held accountable for this. In addition to that, we have a number of things that will come from this. This is only the first step. We have a series of things that will come as a secondary part to this because of the success of today and leading into the safety for tomorrow, because that is our goal, is to keep our communities safe and to keep them safe from those that are willing to use firearms, machine guns that are converted from pistols, converted into machine guns to terrorize our public. So again, I want to thank our partners here today, as well as those ones that couldn't be here today, because without them, this case would not have been nearly as successful. So thank you.
Questions? I actually have one for Commissioner Cox. All of the people charged, obviously, in these documents today are adults, but you spoke specifically about the youngest among us, you used 5 gang members. Can you speak more to how Boston plans to reach those young individuals that obviously can't go through the system like the adults?
So, first and foremost, when you prey on young people and you influence and use your ability to mentor in a negative way, that's just a horrible impact on communities and, more importantly, on the young people themselves. And so, we will work with the city, as we always do, to get people there, to give them the resources that they might need to maybe address some of the issues, the voids they might have had in their lives that might have contributed to their ability to be influenced in that way. It's a very tough thing, but we're going to do all we can, certainly as a city and the police department, to address those issues.
I ask a question. Some of these younger people, children really, that you're talking about, is it their choice? Are they being coerced into doing this? Are they being threatened?
Well, I think what you'll see when you get a chance to look at the charging instruments, they are, I would use the word enticed. I think that they're being recruited into these gangs. These videos I spoke about, when a juvenile reaches a certain level of contribution, they get maybe featured in a video, as alleged in the indictments. So I think it's a combination of things, but it would be more in sort of enticing them into the life as opposed to threats or coercion, as you mentioned. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the videos, is that a long strategy that's been around for a long time? Is it relatively new, and is any of these charges connected to actually producing the videos?
I think for the last several years we have been using social media postings by individuals as evidence of criminal conduct, and these videos sort of fall into that category. There's nothing illegal, certainly, about producing content, but when you're talking about things in a video that corroborates what we're finding in an investigation, certainly we have introduced that in the court as evidence of statements of a defendant that we present to a jury. Yeah. Sorry, Flint, 1 second.
Thank you. This may be in the documents, but when it comes to the 3 murders and the shootings, I'm not seeing any charges here for those specific things. Are these cases where charges have been pressed? I mean, have people been accused of these specific murders, or?
So, to answer that question, there's no federal charge of murder unless the victim is a public official, and there's very limited situations where you can charge of murder. They're charged as predicates under the RICO charge, the RICO conspiracy charge, and that's one of the indictments that was lodged today. And there's a lot of pending charges against the individuals we charged today, so I couldn't give you a precise answer on who's charged with what as it relates to those 3 murders on the state side. Flint?
I noticed and I've heard in documents that one of the gangs, they like to, denigrate in each block, and I was wondering what other active gangs are in Jamaica Plain. What's that situation look like? What are some other rival gangs?
Commissioner?
So, unfortunately, Boston, we do have a few gangs in the area, and I don't want to give them any unnecessary highlights or shout-outs in general, but we do have a few, and maybe at another time we can have a conversation about that. But I just don't want to lift up any of our local gangs that we have there, other than to show that we will absolutely hold them accountable for the activity that they have.
Are you launching investigations into some of these rival gangs?
Yeah, so we don't comment on what we're investigating, what we're not investigating. When there's violent activity in the city of Boston, the Boston police certainly respond, and hopefully, as you're hearing today, we work together, and when it's appropriate to bring in federal resources, we do that. So, and also, I think Special Agent Charge Ferguson alluded to this. This is a stage of a case, and today's arrests lead to more leads and more things to follow up on. Yeah.
In terms of the COVID fraud, I mean, I know that isn't pretty widespread across the country. I mean, what do these charges say about that program, but also just the role of criminal gangs in taking money from that program?
Yeah, I think to your second comment, if you look at activity in this office and frankly in the U.S. Attorney's offices around the country, we're seeing gang activity taking advantage of the situation we're all in the pandemic and the rush to get money out to people who needed it, and there was a lot of fraud. And we have a COVID fraud coordinator in our office that is working in a lot of different spheres, but we're seeing this happen in this sort of violent crimes sector, that people are we're taking advantage of the loopholes and the sort of fog of war, if you will, to pump through a lot of fraudulent applications. So it's consistent with what we've seen in other parts of the country and in other cases in this office.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.